Back in 2020, India launched its national education policy. It was this massive, bold plan to completely revolutionize higher education. But now, 4 years in, that dream of a 21st century campus is crashing head-on with a pretty harsh reality. So, let's break down what's really going on.
When it first came out, the hype was real. It was described as a once-in-a-generation blueprint. The promise was to move away from just memorizing facts and towards a modern, flexible system that could compete on the world stage. It was an amazing vision, which makes what's happening now so puzzling.
Because on the ground, that incredible vision has turned into, well, confusion and a whole lot of administrative headaches. So how did a policy that was designed for excellence end up causing so much chaos? That's the big question we're going to tackle. Okay, so first things first, let's get on the same page about what this revolution was supposed to look like. The goals of the National Education Policy, or NEP 2020, were, to put it mildly, incredibly ambitious.
I mean, the whole plan was built on some really modern ideas. You had things like an academic bank of credits, or ABC, where students could digitally save and move their course credits around. It brought in new 4-year degree programs to get students studying across different fields, and it was all about pushing for digital classrooms and putting a real emphasis on research. Seriously, on paper, this looks like the blueprint for a world-class education system.
But this is where the story starts to change. A huge gap, a great disconnect, has opened up between that vision from New Delhi and the actual everyday reality for millions of students and faculty. And that gap is really what this is all about.
And wow, this slide right here really just lays it all out. On one side, you have the big vision, shiny 21st century infrastructure, super flexible credit models, blended digital learning. And on the other side, the reality, crumbling labs, total confusion over credit transfers, and internet that barely works. This is the struggle playing out on campuses all over the country.
So what's causing this disconnect? Well, the reporting points to 5 key reasons why these really well-intentioned reforms are hitting a wall. Let's dig into each one.
The first, and maybe the biggest, roadblock is simple: money. The policy lays out these incredible, ambitious goals, but it just doesn't provide the cash to make them happen. It's a classic case of wanting the result without providing the resources.
And this chart just says it all, doesn't it? The NEP made a big promise. 6% of India's GDP would be invested in education. But the actual money set aside in the budget, it's been way, way below that target. You just can't build a world-class system on a shoestring budget. It doesn't work.
Reason number 2 is what you could call an administrative quagmire. The main regulatory body, the University Grants Commission, or UGC, has been firing off new guidelines like a machine gun, and universities are just scrambling to keep up.
I mean, just imagine you're running a university. You're being told to completely revamp your software, your exam systems, your entire admissions process all at once. At the same time, you've got students who are totally confused about what their credits are worth, and your faculty's workload has basically doubled, turning them from teachers into data entry clerks. It's not a collaboration, it's chaos.
The third problem is a big one, and it's constitutional. In India's federal system, education is supposed to be a team effort between the central government and the states. But a lot of states are now feeling like the central UGC is just forcing a one-size-fits-all plan on everyone, ignoring local needs and kicking off a major power struggle. And this quote from the source really captures that fear perfectly. The whole idea was for the UGC to be a facilitator, a guide. Instead, it's now seen as a command and control regulator, just telling everyone what to do and undermining the independence of state universities.
All right, the fourth major concern is all about equity. Fairness. When you design a policy that depends so much on digital platforms and private money, you run a huge risk of creating a system that only helps the wealthy and leaves everyone else even further behind. And what that's creating is a potential 2-tier system. Just look at this slide. The elite private universities, they have the money to adopt all the fancy bells and whistles of the new policy. But for the underfunded public colleges where most people study, these reforms are at risk of existing only on paper. It just makes the gap between the haves and the have-nots even wider. And finally, the fifth concern. This one's a little more philosophical. It's about the very purpose of a university. See, the new policy really pushes short-term, skill-based courses that are designed to make graduates more employable.
And that has led a lot of academics to ask a pretty tough question. Is the university just becoming a glorified training center? In this big rush to teach job skills, are we losing the space for deep learning, for critical thinking, for fundamental research? The very soul of what a university is supposed to be.
So with all that, where do we go from here? Well, the sources are pretty clear on this. The problem isn't really the vision itself. A modern, flexible education system is a great goal. The failure, it seems, is all in the process, the how, not the what. So, rescuing this revolution seems to require a pretty fundamental shift. First, you've got to move from top-down orders to bottom-up support, with the UGC actually listening to universities instead of just issuing commands. Second, and this is a big one, you have to back up the ambition with a massive infusion of cash. And finally, the whole system has to respect India's incredible diversity and acknowledge that every state has its own unique needs.
Because without those changes, the message coming from campuses is loud and clear. As one source puts it so powerfully, until all that lofty talk is matched with actual resources on the ground, the national education policy will just remain a revolution that exists mostly in glossy government brochures. A powerful idea just waiting for its moment to become real.